we go.
We're all set?
We're ready.
We haven't, we don't have anybody remote?
We don't.
Okay.
Just Tammy, but it's not really Tammy, it's me. No.
It's Ghost Tammy.
We just haven't figured out how to change the name yet.
Okay, I call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission, June 14th. Will everyone join me in a flag salute, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Castellanos,
Here.
Engel,
Here.
Sarkozy,
Here.
Vice Chair Stroman,
Here.
Chair Willis.
Here. So we'll get, everybody's got their cell phone off, and, yeah.
Forgot to bring mine.
Oh, okay, we're all set. So I don't need to tell anybody how to get here remotely. We've got a consent calendar, the minutes from the May 10th meeting. Are there any questions or corrections, or is there a motion with regard to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next to the public hearing, we've got ordinance amendment 22-764. Consider recommendations to the city council regarding changes, amendments to Escalon Municipal Code, Chapter 17.15.050, procedures, notice of hearing. Is there a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before you tonight is to consider recommending to the Escalon City Council changes to Chapter 17.51050, Notice of Hearing. So during a recent processing of a site and architecture application, the public expressed to City Council their dissatisfaction with the noticing requirements of certain projects. Council has requested that updates be made to this section in regards to the noticing of public hearings. The next section of the staff report lists the different type of applications that come before you that require public notice hearing. Things like annexations, use permits, site and architecture, appeals, extensions, among other things. Currently, the way that our municipal code reads is that city staff, at least 10 days before the meeting, that we have to publish a public hearing notice in the newspaper, as well as mail the notice to the property owners within 300 feet. Potential updates to the chapter related to the mailing of notices and on-site public hearing boards include increasing the number of days and radius of which the public hearing notice is mailed, increasing the number of days before the meeting the public notice is published in the newspaper, and require that a public hearing notice signboard be posted on the property. Currently, staff mails via USPS notices to all owners and occupants within 300 feet of the proposed site. State law requires just property owners. We send it to the property owners as well as any tenants that are living in the property. Except multi-tenant properties like apartment buildings, commercial businesses that have multiple suites, we don't have our assessor's data doesn't identify individual tenants. We just send it to the property owner. And we do that 10 days before, at least 10 days before the hearing. This is set by government code, but the government code is a minimum. So these numbers can be increased additional days beforehand or additional square footage. We just can't go less. Signage on the property. Council has also expressed a desire to update the municipal code to include a requirement that an on-site public hearing board be placed on the property. Staff inquired with other cities what their requirements were for the sign board, and those are attached as Exhibit B. Some cities handle placing the sign, while other cities give instructions to the applicant, and the applicant places the sign. So before us tonight, what we're asking Planning Commission to make recommendations on include the number of days before the Planning Commission meeting that the public hearing notice should be published in the newspaper. Currently, it's at least 10 days, but you can consider additional days. Number of days before the planning commission meeting that the public hearing notice should be mailed. Currently 10 days, you can go more. Surrounding parcel radius that the public hearing notice should be mailed. Currently, we mail it to 300-foot radius, and we're seeking recommendations if you want to increase that. Possible updates to the language that the mailed notice be sent to property owners and where possible tenants. And that kind of lines up with what we're already doing, but as new staff takes over, they look to the municipal code as a set of instructions or a guide of what to do. And so to continue those getting sent to tenants, we should put that in the municipal code. And then whether or not to require an on-site public hearing board, and then some details that should be included on the board, such as days before the meeting that the board is put on the property, the size of the board, materials, size of font, information on the board, the location of the board. Some cities required more than one board, depending on how long the frontage of the property was, or if it was a corner lot. Proof to Development Services Department that the applicant posted it. After the meeting, how many days until the sign should be taken down, and any other details that you would want to include. And then any other recommendations that Planning Commission may have for this section of the municipal code. Staff published the notice of public hearing for this ordinance amendment in the newspaper June 1st. And staff, as of today, we didn't receive any inquiries, comments. We didn't receive any communication from the public on it. So staff is recommending that you open the public hearing and take any public comment on the project, close the public hearing, and then review and make any recommendations to the City Council on this chapter of the municipal code. Exhibit A, the green marker inside the blue circle in the Exhibit A is like the location the project would be happening, and then the blue shaded area is an example of how far out, like 300 feet or 600 feet would be. We tell you how many parcels are in that range, and then the potential number of notices mailed. And the number of notices mailed, that's a maximum, assuming if we send one to every property owner and if there was a tenant in every property. So this is a maximum. It would be very rare that you would hit that number because you usually have a good mix of property-owned tenants and tenant-located properties. And then Exhibit B are the examples of notice boards that other cities do. So if you have any questions, staff is available.
Before we get to recommendations, I would like to point out two things. In the existing ordinance, that says the newspaper has to be published in San Joaquin County. Our Escalon paper is not published in San Joaquin County, so I think that needs to be corrected.
Distributed, maybe a better word, distributed in San Joaquin
Well,
County?
it does say circulated in the city of Escalon, and that's accurate, but it's published in a different county, so we need to change that word.
Circulated in this, yeah.
Also, in the next paragraph, well, no, let's back up to the introduction. Unless state law requires otherwise, blah, 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 and then it says planning commission or by the city council. Does the city council ever look at something first? Or is it always, I mean, if a planning commission is looking at something, there would be the sign that we're gonna be considering the characteristics of tonight, but does the city council, would we put up a similar board for city council?
Yeah, so like rezones, if someone's gonna rezone a property, it comes to planning commission first under a public hearing.
So we
and
could
then
have 2 dates on.
and
one
then it would
sign?
go to city council also under a public hearing. So
Okay.
there are some applications that come to planning commission first under public hearing and then go to city council under public hearing.
Okay, in that case, in part B, it says, in the opinion of the city planner. Should it also say, or should it say city staff, city manager, should it say something other than city planner if it's, or is it still gonna be under the opinion of the city planner if it's in front of city council? Later on in, In 17.51.090, it says, or the deciding body. Is there different wording that could be more accurate, or would it always be safe to say the city planner?
Are you talking about this section right here?
Yeah, just where it says city, in the opinion of the city planner.
So that section is talking about how we generate our list of who to mail it to. And so we use a software parcel quest, which accesses assessor data. And so we put in an address, tell it we want all the addresses within 300 feet, and that's where we got the exhibit. That's the software generates that for us, and then it lists for us the address and the property owner and their contact information. So it's saying that we would use the tax roll, which information comes from the tax roll, or if, in the opinion of city planner, we have a document at City Hall that gives us a more updated information. So if we knew that a house sold in this area, we could utilize the new person's address that we're
So
aware
it'd
of.
always be city planner, whether it was city council making the
think city
decision
planners.
or the planning
I
commission.
think
Yeah.
city planner is appropriate because it's the department head.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then over the last couple of decades, we've been without a planner at times, so I just want to make sure the verbiage is correct.
So the development services manager is also the city planner now. They had updated that, and so that position carries both titles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, technically with no public, do I open a public hearing? Do I just say, go straight to the commission?
Still open it.
Okay, open the public hearing. And then nobody's on the remote?
No.
We'll close the public hearing, and then, should we just do these 1, 2, 3, do them in order, 1 through 6?
Items to consider making recommendations on, I think we just go down the list.
Okay, so how do we feel about the 10-day current notice period?
I think that seems fair.
Jeremy?
I concur.
Mark?
So my only comment would be, I mean, I don't subscribe to the Escalon Times, but is that published once a week?
Once a week on Wednesdays. And so for us to, if you want it to show up in the newspaper on a particular Wednesday, you have to send it to them by the Thursday before.
So is the 10 days when it's in the paper, or is it when you send?
10 days is in the paper. It's in the paper for 10 days before the meeting.
So it runs twice.
Okay.
It runs once.
Put the paper to bed on Monday,
Okay. And
so
then,
it could run 2 Wednesdays.
yeah, it runs.
If you
two
wanted to
Wednesdays.
publish it 2 times, currently they only publish it 1 time.
I think it would be prudent to run twice. So it's, if
So
that-
put 10 days or 2 issues. Can we do that?
sure.
Or you can separate it out. You can pick what types of projects you think would fit a 10-day, like maybe a conditional use permit is less of an impact, and you could do 10 days on those. But then new development or anything, development of a vacant lot that would go through like a rezone, those are bigger processes that also go to council, maybe give those additional days. It doesn't all have to be uniform. We just have to make sure whatever is decided is put into the code the right way so that we follow it.
2 things. Number 1, I have every confidence in staff to make a decision. But on the other hand, I don't want to have a situation where people are upset that staff made the wrong choice. And we only ran it once when it should have been twice, because the project warranted 2 runnings. So, and do you want that extra responsibility if we leave it up to you rather than have a hard and fast rule?
I mean, whatever's in the code is what we would follow. From a staff standpoint, we're really, really good about trying to expedite projects when they are submitted, because people get upset if we take too long on things. And because it's just the 2 of us, as soon as we get it, we start the process, get it moving. And so that doesn't occur and they don't think that we're holding them up. And so I do suggest with certain projects that we keep that in mind, because when you have to go through that process and it's in the code, we can't change that. And so if they have to wait 30 days and it has to post and have so many publishings, that affects them moving forward. And I do have to say, with a lot of the projects that we've seen in the couple past years, everybody's in a hurry all the time.
Well,
It always seems like we're,
the project on Irwin was in 2 successive papers, 2 issues. And I don't know if that was a conscious decision or if it just happened that way.
it was in,
Because-
it had an environmental document that had to be published. It had a hearing before the planning commission that had to be published, and those are all separate actions. And then if it went to council, it would have had a hearing before the city council that would have required a hearing. So anytime it approaches a board, it has the hearing. It had an extra hearing because the environmental document required its own hearing.
So we could say 10 days or up to staff, the discretion of staff?
I would
Depending upon the
I would-
complexity of the issue?
I would prefer it just be clearly,
Yes, just
Stated.
make it straight and standard.
Why don't we look at the types of applications and say annexation, that should be, and I have another question. Are we talking about calendar days or working days?
calendar days.
Should we specify calendar days on that document instead of working days?
So I'm gonna take this back to public contract code. Public contract code for construction, development, what have you. If an RFP or an RFQ is issued, under public contract code in the state of California, you're required to run it 2 consecutive postings. So you run it this week, you run it next week, and you've met the requirements of the California Public Contract Code. So if that's the case, my suggestion is let's keep that standard per the Public Contract Code. That way, staff knows we've got to run it twice, just as if we do an RFP, it's standard. Run it twice, and there's no ambiguity in that. Just my suggestion.
So when you submit it to the paper, can you request that it run twice?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you specify what dates you want it. So like for tonight's meeting was the 14th. It ran in the 1st, because that gave us the 10 days. It could run the 1st and the 8th. You could say the 2 consecutive meetings, 2 consecutive publication dates prior to the meeting.
Okay, I like that. How do the rest of you feel, Steve? Or do you still want to look at the individual?
Well, I'm thinking on, you know, a conditional use permit. Do we really want to post that thing twice? I mean, because, I could see something like, you know, what was happening on Irwin. You want to post that twice to make sure that, you know, enough people in the community know what's going on. But you know, a use permit?
I would say in my discussions with residents and people, the newspaper is the last place they've looked.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and so it's hard because it also costs us the most money to post. Like we pay about $100 every time we run it.
Okay, so
80 to 120, depending on what needs to be published, because we have to define the project detail and make it clear enough.
So let's get to the 21st century. Is it required to be published in a newspaper?
One time, yes.
In the printed,
One time within 10 days, and you could make that longer, but you can't make it shorter. But it does need to be published.
in the printed edition, not the
In the
electronic.
printed edition, that's still state mandated, yeah.
Well, and like Sean is pointing out, more and more people I talk to do not read the Escalon Times. So we want to reach as many people as possible, but what else are you thinking?
Facebook, Twitter.
Well,
Because
what
of
I'm
those-
thinking is we put on the front page of the city's webpage, notice of public hearing, we put it there. We post it on the city's Facebook page. That doesn't cost anything. So maybe what we do is we run it one time in the Escalon Times, and then we have a section of the website and social media
Do you have
notice
a,
of public hearing.
do you have a feel for how many people access Facebook and the city website?
So our Facebook probably doesn't get a lot of action, but the people that follow it share it, and I think that's where it gets action. We Escalon shares it, Escalon residents shares it, and that's where it gets picked up.
Well, the only thing, I sat here at a city council meeting when the chief of police pointed out that the information that was out there on We Escalon and Escalon residents is not accurate. And it bothered him that people were relying on that information. So I would want to make sure that what we put out there is accurate and on the best sites possible.
Well, that's why I'm saying,
But the problem is we can't prevent them from changing it, or editing it, or,
post it on the city's website or on the city's Facebook page, and what they would do, they would share it.
That would be okay.
They can't tweak
that's
it.
what everything happens right now. Like, right now, we're advertising for lifeguards, and we're advertising for soccer coaches. We post the advertisement, and everybody shares it on their pages. And that's basically how we get more stuff out there, not so much that everybody's looking at our page specifically.
Maybe what we do is, I would like to retract my previous statement and say, post it one time in the newspaper within the 10 days. But concurrently to that, start a 2-week prior to the meeting to post it on the city's website and on social media.
Regardless of the type of hearing?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it simple.
What about Steve, what do you think?
It doesn't cost anything.
So who does?
Somebody has to manage
Who
that.
posts to Facebook and to the website?
Typically Jenny or Courtney. And it would be per public hearing, so you have a public hearing at Planning Commission, that would be posted the 10 days, and then if it was an item that went to council, that would be a start over, a new hearing, new posting, new posting in the newspaper, new mail out to the residents, new posting on the Facebook page, separate post, new post.
Is there any hardship for staff to do that?
No, as long as we put it into our process, we just.
And is there any project that doesn't qualify for that type of notification?
I mean, most of the time, let's go back and look at the history. Most of the time, when people do have a problem with the decision or have an issue, not necessarily a problem, an issue with a concern, they hardly ever come for conditional use permits. They normally come for everything else.
Yeah, it's use permit and variances are the ones that are more your neighbors. Your neighbors are the ones that want to know.
I think if we're mailing the notifications, and we haven't got to that portion yet, we are notifying the directly affected parties. And what has been done is fairly standard across the board. The 10-day notification, Sean, I know your statement as far as for state contracts or state requirements. We all also understand how much additional work working for the state is, right? We're a small community that wants to reach out to the directly affected parties. I can understand what we're saying about posting it on social media, but as we're looking forward, platforms like Facebook are losing followers by the day. So while it may be effective today, that doesn't mean next year there's a new social media platform that we end up having to transition to and figure out how to do that. I do believe that that posting it on the city website is a good idea, because that's a place that if somebody wants to know something, they have the ability to take a look and find out what's going on. But with the 10 days, posting it the second time, the cost, is that covered in their fees? So the applicant is covering that cost? Or?
It is supposed to be, yes. And so we'll have to, once we know everything that's being approved, we'll have to reevaluate these fees and make sure that cost is being covered. And if it's not, we would come back to council and ask to have the fee increased. I don't think it's gonna, it depends what radius you want to do. If we're still staying in a certain radius, I don't think it would be too much of a difference. But if we go the full 2,500 feet or something like that, it might be more of additional cost. But the way to address that is to have them pay for that cost in their application fee.
So in staff's opinion, what would the simplest form of this be? To maintain the current procedure that we use, or to expand upon that?
For
It
you,
could be larger than 300 feet.
I'm sorry, just for the newspaper
Just for the
portion.
newspaper? I think the newspaper, the one hearing 10 days in advance is good. Like I was mentioning, we don't get the impression that very many people read that portion, and it goes in the legals, and so it doesn't have a photo, it's not colorful, it doesn't attract you unless you're looking for it. It's a legal ad. Unless you're into reading notices of public hearing, you're not gonna go looking for it, you know?
Right.
And 10 days in advance when you're mailing it out, it's basically giving people a few days for the notice to get to them and giving them a week's notice. Maybe that gets expanded. But I do think in this situation, the state's minimum is pretty accurate, because if you give people a month notice, they forget. Oh, this is a month away, and then they don't remember. It's like the same thing with trying to hit that fine, whatever. You don't want to give too much notice to where they forget and don't show up, but you don't want to give them too little notice to where they're not having the opportunity to plan. So I think 10 days is good, maybe 15 would be best, because I do realize right now, and I don't know if it'll always be that way, but when I mail something out, it takes several weeks to
Up to
get.
Sacramento and then.
Yeah, I mean, even, it's different everywhere it goes. I mail the DMV, it takes forever to get there, but maybe they're just holding my check, I don't know.
Let's finalize number one before we muddy the waters with number two. So currently 10-day minimum, and then the city website. Can we say something like social media?
Yes, I
A
wanna
well-established social media currently in
Keep it-
use, widely spread?
I was gonna say keep it broad and official City of Escalon social media sites.
What about that?
Which currently is Facebook.
Yeah.
That's the only one we're
So-
using, we're not on anything else right
Yeah,
now.
but I too have stopped using Facebook, so
Yeah,
yeah.
I have two.
It's
Yeah.
as antiquated as a newspaper. I mean, if we're
Well-
looking at the 21st
But,
century.
but ultimately, guys, I'm just gonna throw it out there, that's where the majority of our residents get their information. So,
So we could say post on the official city website and city social media site at least how many days before the meeting?
I would say 15.
So you're changing this from 10 to 15?
No, the newspaper
Oh,
is one
newspaper, Keep it
time.
at 10?
Social
minimum.
media, well, actually, it doesn't cost anything. Have it run for 30 days prior to
I
that.
don't, no, I think people are gonna forget.
It'll clutter up everything.
Yeah, I think 10
I
is.
like clutter.
And if they're looking at the 10 days and they're just able to squeeze in their ad in time to make the meeting, then it's really pushing their issue out an additional month. So instead of potentially being on this month's calendar, because it's required to be there for 30 days, it's going to push it to next month's calendar, which imposes on the applicant.
Another thing too is that we do provide the go-to meeting, and so people don't have to physically show up anymore. They are able to access us via go-to, which is different than how it's been in the past. And the current whatever is that we'll keep the go-to.
The only reason that
And you
I
do-
am saying 30 days is because when Irwin Village was brought before everyone, the city manager got a wrath of crap thrown at her because people didn't know about it.
Or didn't understand.
I disagree with that statement. However, in order to combat our constituents trying to personally attack city staff, I would like to just see it out there and run concurrently. 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. And I mean, if people ignore it, that's on them. But at the same time, we say, Look, guys, this has been running for 30 days.
People didn't
Want a
see it.
variance 30 days?
Yeah, people didn't see it because of the mailings.
Well, and I think it was a legalese to some extent, you know, they didn't know what it all entailed, and the more it got talked about and misrepresented, then they got alarmed, and so I think, you know, if we're concise and,
So maybe Steve, would you say that if it's not anything except a conditional use permit or a variance, because the rest of these are pretty heavy items, that those items should run longer than the CUP and the variances? I completely understand what you're saying and what Dominique is saying about we don't want to, I mean, they'll get bogged down and they'll lose track of it and it could roll into the next month. All I'm trying to avoid is people coming back and saying, we never knew anything about it. That's the only reason I was saying that, suggesting that.
It'll have to be brought to their attention in some way. Just the same way people aren't gonna look in the newspaper for legal notifications, they're not gonna come to the city website to look for legal notifications. My personal opinion is the state has set a standard and a minimum, and we meet that minimum. It has the least amount of changes. We don't have to add any additional rules to follow or separate anything. It's fairly standard, I mean, across the board, and for the items that we have to look at, I think that requires the least amount of change for anything that we have before us.
But I can tell you
The bulletin
that,
board is probably gonna help with that as well. If you're driving by the property and there's that big bulletin board, that seemed to be something that a lot of people grabbed onto. They'll notice something's posted, see the bulletin out there, and then maybe call in. The one thing that we experienced at staff for this project was not one person called the city hall at all the entire time. Nothing. I mean, and our phone numbers in the hearing, our phone numbers in the thing, nobody got any calls asking any questions at all. And so for us, that's alarming, in the aspect that, you know, you're going on social media and you're making comments on projects like misinformation, putting out information when you could call City Hall. And it's better to talk to staff about the stuff, and we can produce documents. And so if anybody calls in and asks for something, we provide it. I want a copy of the notice. I want a copy of the plans, the application. I want to see this. We usually keep a copy up front. They could come in and view them. We'll email it to them. I mean, it's just a matter of calling in and asking for it, and we provide it. And so that would have been I think that would have helped a lot more if people actually contacted us. I don't think it would have changed the circumstances of the project or anything, but to at least be able to get the information out there. But the bulletin board will end up posting a set of the plans. We'll end up posting the notification. The only thing is, because it's bulletin board, they're gonna have to stop their car and get out to look at it if they want to use that as their opportunity. Otherwise, they drive by and call here.
oh, I have a suggestion about that when we get to item number 5.
well, so 10 days, like Jeremy was talking about, the least number of changes. If we keep it currently 10 days minimum, and then just add, posting on the city website, and then using social media.
Also 10 days?
I'm for the same time frame.
Yeah, that seems adequate. What about everybody else?
Whatever you would like to do, Chair.
So all that for no change.
Well, we'll temporarily approve that and move on to number 2. Number of days before the planning commission meeting, the public hearing notice should be mailed,
I don't think 10 days is long enough.
especially with it going up to Sacramento and coming back.
Correct. I think-
Although you can take things to the post office and say, keep it local, and they won't do that. You probably have to slip them a little something, make a request, but.
What? I just took the ethics class. What are you talking about?
Learned something today.
No, I mean,
I do have to say, some of the stuff that gets returned to us, I'm like, really? It was across the street from your building. You couldn't just deliver it? But
No, but
I realize they follow their process too. but-
well, but if I've got a birthday card for somebody here in town, I just go to the window and say, hey, this is local, you know,
Yeah.
avoid the extra traffic, and they'll keep it in the local.
Well, I was told if you hand it to them at the window,
Yeah,
they won't send it, route it to Sacramento first, so that's just an FYI.
Well, I can tell you, sorry to digress, but I can tell you, I was in the post office one time with a gentleman by the name of Dave Willis, and boy, those clerks were, whatever you need, Dave, we're here to help you, so.
see, he's greased a few palms.
I think
So
there's some.
what you're saying is we give it to the volunteer and then have him take care of it.
The volunteer or his wife.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, the postmasters are gonna be the Willises not around.
All right, back to the issue here. So what, the 10 days is too small, 15 days,
Well,
the minimum for mailing?
candidly, I don't trust the mail service. I would say 21 days, 15 days. Because, so for example, in Sonora right now, if you mail something from downtown Sonora and it has to get out to Mono Way, right now it's running about a week. And that's a matter of 2 miles.
Definitely horse and carriage.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's, I mean, that's just what I'm saying. 10 days is the minimum, but given the timeliness of the U.S. Postal Service, I just was suggesting extending that out a little.
Is there any feel for how many people respond to a mailed notice?
Very little,
Very few people or very little?
very, very few people.
I would say on average for development projects, site and architecture, conditional use permits, 1, maybe 2.
So if we're extending the days, we're not exactly changing expenses, we're just
Giving them
The
more
cost
time.
would be the same.
giving you more
Yeah, cost would be
time.
the same, yeah.
What do we think? 15, 20?
I'm good with 15, but it does potentially push out when it would be for the meeting, right? If we're worried about delaying projects, because technically, it wouldn't, I mean, if we sent it out, if we go back to the calendar and we sent it out 10 days ago, I guess I'm saying, is there going to be how will we know that they received it by the time we have the meeting?
We won't know if they've received it.
We don't know if they've
We don't know
received it.
that.
We don't send it certified. We just send it regular first-class mail, so it's not something that's track or proof of delivery or signature or anything like that.
That's
So-
where it gets pricey.
But at 15 days, it wouldn't push the project out to the next meeting. We have kind of a 30-day minimum. If it's a very simple project, we can kind of squeeze them in 25 days because every project that comes in, we route to different agencies, which is where you get your conditions of approval. We send it to the fire department and the ambulance and the garbage company, and everybody gets to look at the project and make comments. And so we tell applicants 30-day review period. Unless it's kind of a simple one, we'll try to squeeze them in and give the other agencies a bit of a shorter review period. So if we accept an application on this date, today, we tell them 30 days is our review period, and then whatever is the next planning commission after the 30 days is when you'll get on. So it is a little challenging to accept an application today and say it was, 20, 25 day that we have to mail out the public hearing notice.
Okay.
As staff, we don't have the public hearing notice generated, 2 or 3 days after we accept a new application.
Does 15 days give you enough time?
15 days would be fine.
Jeremy, 15?
I can get on board with that.
Steve,
Yeah,
15?
Yep.
Okay, 2 down. Number 3, 300 feet minimum radius for public hearing notices.
Oh, I'll chime in first.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I like the 2,500 foot radius.
No.
The 2,500
I do.
for everything
For
or
all
just
the
for
projects?
stuff?
Okay, that is a great point. So
Yeah.
for new developments, new construction, for the variance, conditional use permit, that's probably the two exceptions.
So the 300 feet, and it was pointed out in one of the meetings, is going like 2 households over. So it really is catching, because we typically do, well, it's 4 households over, because the minimum lot size is frontage is 60 feet. And so you're looking at 2 houses on each side of you roughly. And that's basically catching those who would be directly affected by it. And so that makes sense for use permits. Most use permits and conditional use residential wise, now maybe commercial, it might be different, it just depends on the application.
I think that's too much.
No, for the big stuff.
For the development, so like Irwin, for example, I think that was the big complaint in that area, that the notices weren't sent to very many people because there weren't very many people in the area. So the
But-
public wasn't really
But
notified.
as far as relevant input, what kind of relevancy is the input gonna have if it's from 2,500 feet away?
For a new development or new construction?
For Irwin, or for, and let me back up. Back when the housing was proposed for Olray between Brennan and, I mean, is there like a center hub and you go feet out from there, or is it
It's
from
the
the edge?
outside property lines.
Okay.
Right now, 300 feet from the outer edge of the property line.
You don't have that program on your computer, do you?
Do you want to see it for Irwin Village?
Yes. Uh-oh, she's reading my mind.
Ask and you shall receive.
Please.
I think.
Oh, 1,000.
All right, so down to El Portal.
And see, all of those people would have been affected by the traffic flow impacts.
Well, even further back, when we look at that, if we're talking about traffic flow, everybody behind El Portal that uses Irwin as their way to access 120.
Or Walnut. Is it or Walnut, I mean.
Or Walnut, it would have impacted
Yeah.
Walnut.
It'll push, that development would have pushed traffic going other routes to get out.
Well, so that's 1,000. You still like 2,500?
So that's a 1,000-foot radius, or that is a 1,000-foot from the center of that property to
From the edge of the
edge?
property, number one.
From each edge.
Ms.
From the
Trejo?
edge to the edge is 1,000 feet. So the diameter from this yellow to this yellow is 2,000.
So how about 2,000 or 2,500? Can we see what that looks like?
A lot of blue.
Another question for staff. The cost that's associated with those mailings belongs to the applicant?
We would need to update the cost. If it's a significant increase, we would update the rates.
So it's built in now, the mailing is included in the standard fee?
For 300 feet.
300 feet.
All right, so this goes over to Pioneer.
I don't think it's updated it yet.
Any idea on what the financial impact or the fee impact would be for each one of these, 300 to 600 to 12, 2,000, and 2,500?
Did we put that together?
Well, look
Yeah,
at the numbers in
I
each
have
circle,
it.
you can see how.
Oh, I don't know that
complicated
this
it
can
is.
access the common drive.
And it
Well,
would depend if
do the
it's.
simple math.
Do you use emails for
152
anything?
times 50
50
something.
cents, yeah, 55.
We don't have access to resident email data.
The number of
So that's-
notices would
That's
be,
potential, so that's if there's tenant and owner. So an owner occupied, it would just be the one to the parcel.
if, depending on where it's at in the city, if it's in the middle of a subdivision, there's going to be a whole lot more notices sent out than someone out on Sexton.
Yeah, look at, yeah.
So, we've been talking about it now for a couple years. What does, the planned development at Brennan and 120? What does that look like for a radius?
I think that's a good point. Any area in town that we're looking at as being a new development is
page
going
just-
to
oh,
be skirted by nothing.
Too many.
You're crashing the system.
Yeah, sometimes it crashes and I had to log into it probably 15 times.
Look, it's the whole town.
Half the city.
So that would actually be 5,000 then, right? If we were looking at the,
The radius
radius.
is 2,500, but from one edge to the other edge is 5,000 feet.
okay, so maybe we would be looking at diameter of 2,500 in my opinion, as opposed to 5,000, because that's a mile, right?
So that pretty much is half a city, half the, it's McHenry all the way to the city limits and top to bottom. So you're thinking
Okay, now,
1,200? That would be
all of
half
us,
of,
well, I don't know what Jeremy
1,250?
is, but you're over here, right?
Correct.
And Steve and I over here, Mark, you're over here, so none of us, if we hadn't been on this body, we would have,
That thing on Brennan and 120 is going to impact everybody south of 120, east of Brennan to McHenry. Those people are going to, the people in the north, that live off of Miller and going north,
Sorry, Diana, didn't mean to.
And the same if we ended up ever doing a development out on McHenry or towards Escalon, Belota, or any of those items,
Yeah.
that's dramatically going to affect the town, right?
I think it'll be faster if I go out.
oh, can we fix a set radius, or should we word it in a different way?
Staff would prefer a fixed radius.
So maybe we can start with variances and conditional use permits. I think all of us agree it doesn't need to go 5,000 feet for somebody to move their fence.
I think that's bare minimum, 300 would suffice for that.
So if we expanded that even just a little bit to 600, would that cover their block? They were in the middle of the block and somebody had to drive by their house every day and that does impact them. Is 600 feet enough?
I think that would suffice, yeah. It's
Pretty
going to
good.
be different depending on lot size, but for the most part, I shouldn't say everybody, the newer homes have the smaller lot sizes, for the most part. It's currently, what is it, the 4 houses on each side, so maybe the 600 adds 5 or 6 on each side.
I think 600 would be fine.
I agree, 600 would be good.
Steve? What do you think?
Are we talking about conditional use and variances?
Correct.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the people that are going to be immediately affected by those next door, across the street, behind them.
The 600 feet, I would catch that, yeah.
What was, so 600 feet, 4 variances and CUPs, and then what was the other?
We haven't got to that.
Oh, yeah, okay,
We're crashing the system trying to upload it.
okay.
At least we're not getting kicked out, it's just
I know.
freezing, that's all.
Yeah.
Yesterday I got kicked out, I finally gave up.
What is that one?
So this is 1,200 feet.
Oh.
Half of the 2,500.
Where does that go? That's
There we go.
to
So we're
Edgewood.
looking at the Irwin property again.
This is still the Irwin property. We can switch over to Brennan if you want.
Yeah, because Brennan, it's going to probably go maybe to Walnut, to the furthest east that would hit. May not even go that far.
1,200 feet?
We can see what it looks like.
The past Walnut.
I think 1,200 is fair.
I agree with the comment that that in particular development will impact everyone in town. They have a say in it. Anybody that accesses Brennan, either to cut through and bypass town, or anybody that comes down Yosemite and heads in or out of town.
But I don't think the intent of notices is to go out to the broader community. And that's what the social media is for, the newspaper about a project. This is, I mean, I wouldn't expect to get a notice in the mail, and I live right behind here, about a project on Brennan, regardless of what it is.
I live in this neighborhood. This notice would miss my house by one home.
The same here, it missed mine by one.
And
Well,
I
that-
use Brennan
By two.
and Yosemite
It
every day.
misses mine by a couple of,
2 houses.
Well, that's why I said 1,200 on purpose, because I wanted to keep you guys in the dark.
For new developments, I think they impact the community. The community is going to want to know about the new developments. Maybe they are interested in upgrading or moving, or they have plans and they want to be the first in the know and be able to have access to that information. So I think for a new development, it should be as broad as we can possibly get. I agree with the social media. I agree with posting it on the city website. I think that's definitely a notification. But if there's a potential traffic impact, which that would be,
Well, but is that pending annexation too?
That item is
So
pending
that
annexation.
would fall into the same category.
So here on the screen, these are all the applications that come before Planning Commission that require a public hearing notice. So you indicated conditional use permits and variances, upping it to 600 square feet.
I was just thinking, for simplicity's sake, we all can say conditional use permits and variances aren't really that big of a deal. The others are a big deal, so if you double the 600, that's how I came up with the 1,200.
And do you see any of those other categories that don't need the 1,200?
item G seems like that could potentially be included in that.
In the 6 or the 12?
And the 6.
I think I could be, oh no,
An extension for any permit.
yeah, time extensions, why mail it to 1,200 people if they're asking for a 2-week extension?
I could get on board with I as well.
And F you would need to go out to the same group as you originally did, right? Whether that's 6 or 12?
Yeah, depending on what the project was. If it was a use permit and there was an appeal, we'd follow the use permit procedure. If it was a site and architecture or rezone and they appealed, we'd follow the rezone or the site and architecture.
So 600 for C, D, G, and I, and 1,200 for everything else, as appropriate, except for F where it has to match the original one?
I think my colleague to my right still wants the whole enchilada.
What's that?
No?
Oh, as I look at it some more, I think maybe we looked at it as what are the smaller items. Maybe we looked at that in the wrong way and say, what are the bigger items? Let's keep everything that's the smaller items at 600 feet and then really address the larger things, the annexations, the zone changes.
That's why we said that
AD.
C and D would be 600, and then the bigger ones, annexations,
Yep.
changes of zoning, site and architecture, those are the 1,200 ones.
Right, and then some of these other ones, demolition of a designated historic structure, that would be larger. Everything else appears like it could be within the 600 feet.
Okay, so C, D, G, and I, 600, the rest at 12? except for F? The same as what it was initially?
Actually, we're looking at it differently. We're looking at it as A, B, E. The bigger one.
Okay.
We're both saying the exact same thing.
Well, as long as that's the case, if that's the case, we can move on? What do you think?
Can you say it
Clarify the
again?
big letters for me again. A, B,
A,
E.
B, E, H, J, K.
Are gonna be 1,200, and the rest will be 600.
Your city council now. They made it so difficult.
Well, I and F would be the same. I believe the time extensions, that would apply to whatever
Correct.
came into.
If it's a 1,200, the appeal, 1,200. If it's 600, the appeal, 600.
So F, I, and J, same as what they were, okay. All right, number 4, update the language that the mail notice be sent to all property owners and where possible tenants. You know, I went into this thinking I want tenants notified, and if you don't have a name, just put tenant. But now if we're going out 1,200 feet, I don't want the city to incur more of an expense, or possibly an unnecessary expense.
And that, plus I think that puts the burden of the property owner to share with their tenants exactly what's happening.
So add the tenants,
No,
not add the tenants.
not add the tenants.
Well, but we've got property owners that are not, they're out of town property owners, so,
But aren't they, they're still gonna get a notice.
if they don't, do they communicate? Do you find that they communicate with tenants? Do tenants come in not knowing what's going on?
Sometimes landlords don't share information with their tenants.
Sometimes we don't know when we're talking to somebody whether they're the property owner or the tenant.
What does the language state now, staff?
It currently says, mail the notice to all persons, businesses, corporations, public or
What
private.
what is the notice that, like, if I was getting a postcard, what would it say?
Oh, it's the public hearing notice.
So it'll say Escalon Planning Commission or Escalon City Council, notice of public hearing. Please be notified that at the next planning commission meeting that's scheduled for July 15th, 2022 at 7 PM, and they will be discussing the following item. And then we put down the project number,
It's the
whatever
same,
title.
same language that gets published in the newspaper.
I don't think there needs to be any change to language.
Do you think we should continue to send it to tenants, or should we just start sending it to property owners like the municipal code currently says?
I don't have a feel for who's a tenant here in Escalon, but I like to inform as many people as possible.
Could you,
And it's gonna be difficult, I mean, we're not gonna catch all tenants, because some property owners rent their houses out and cover utility, and if they cover utility and it stays in their name, we're not gonna know who the tenant is.
But do you have
But
to
if they
know?
pay their own.
I mean, because what if you're sending stuff to, what is it, Willow Heights or something, apartment A, apartment B, apartment C, regardless of the name of the tenant?
So what we currently do, so single-family housing, you know, Joe Smith, who lives in Ripon, gets a notice because he owns the property. He's what's on the tax roll. You know, he
So
owns.
you don't send it to the physical address?
He owns 2060 McHenry. We put current occupant, 2060 McHenry.
Oh, okay.
So the post office delivers it to the property and one to the property owner. Where we aren't able to do it is like Willow Heights.
Multifamily, yeah.
can you just do current occupant?
I would suggest just doing owner of record, because, you know, who's got a buy-in? Does the tenant really have a buy-in on what's going on? Where if there's something happening that's gonna impact my value as an absentee owner, I'm gonna wanna know about that.
Yeah, but if it impacts traffic and they're going to and from work every day,
Just see tenants taking that, most tenants, taking on a card and be like, "Pfft."
Yeah.
Well, that's what's gonna happen even with most of the owners, right? Another piece of junk mail. But the people that are interested and care about these things, they're gonna find the information, whether we
Well, I
know.
was going to say it's covered elsewhere, so yeah, I'll give in on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a nice to have, but I think when I look at these potential numbers being mailed, if it's doubled, that's
Yeah.
a cost
Yeah.
that the city doesn't need to, or the applicant doesn't need to occur.
Well, and I'm thinking if we're gonna actually start posting properties again, then people are gonna know it if they're driving the street. Whereas, now you don't know what's going on unless you read it in the Escalon Times or the newspaper or the website.
Okay,
No tenants.
no tenants.
Okay.
Okay, so number 5, we're on to the requirement of the on-site public hearing board. Again, A, days before the meeting, the board should be posted.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have an idea about number 5. So personally, I don't like the 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
I think it's ugly. I think it detracts from the neighborhood. I understand you want it out there. But the number one thing that we're trying to do is encourage people to know about a project, know about the public hearing, contact city staff. Yes, there was emphasis on that.
Yeah.
So I did some research on my own. And currently in Sacramento County, their development services branch has a sign that almost looks like a real estate sign. So what happens is an applicant comes in, they submit they say they're gonna do this project, they submit everything, and then they pay a deposit for a sign. And they pick up the sign, they go, they set it on their property, they're responsible for it. And then, but it doesn't get into all the specifics, notice of public hearing. It just basically says an application has been filed with the development services manager, public hearing date, bam, date and time, and that's it. But it's not obtrusive in the neighborhood, but at least it triggers thought, like, oh, something's happening there. Looks so much better than a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Why
Did you catch,
did
is
you
it-
pick on a 4x8, I wonder?
Is it reusable?
Correct.
They bring it back to City
They
Hall
bring
and
it
get their
back to-
deposit back?
Get their deposit back. If it's vandalized or destroyed or whatever, they lose their deposit. But the reason I picked 4x8 is because in previous discussions, there are a few city council members that prefer the 4x8 sheet of plywood.
That's why there's that ugly one out there by the lumberyard?
No
That's
comment.
only half covered by the sign on the plywood? Well, I'm with you. On the one hand, they might appreciate some specifics. On the other hand, the sign that would have gone in front of the mini mart, as far as distance from the sidewalk, the size where it should be put, would have been a lot different than the signs that were put out on Irwin. So to say it has to be a certain size, a certain font size, a certain material, we can specify that, but there are so many variables. And so, and I like the idea of the applicant picking up the cost rather than us, but we could give guidelines and, they could still take a picture, show that they did it,
But-
all that, and I like the idea of getting the deposit, if we want, so we could set some parameters still, but have,
But Chair, in my opinion, that's a waste. Why, the city could hold on to the sign, they submit a deposit, and then they go put it on their property, because that also encourages buy-in, that, oh, well, I have skin in this game besides just my project. It forces people, if I was somebody who was doing a development and I saw somebody out there digging a sign, I'd be like, what's going on? And that would spur discussion as opposed to having this giant billboard, especially in a residential neighborhood.
Well, what about specifying the days, well, the proof of the posting, how many signs can be on the property? What about those parameters? You okay with those, or you don't like those either?
I think that is all something that the applicant won't have to do, and instead, it's just a reusable sign, like a real estate sign. They come and they put a $250 deposit down, they put down when their public hearing is, date and time, location, city hall.
And where does the material come from for the sign?
The city will, Justin can make 3 or 4 of these signs, have them here, so when somebody brings in their application, part of that is a $250 fee. They get the sign, they go put it on their property, and that starts the process.
Another thing, you know, like, say, where the mini mart is, you're driving by at 35 miles per hour, or you're walking by, or maybe on Roosevelt or whatever, as opposed to, say, Irwin, where you could be driving on California, driving on Irwin, or driving on 120. And when you make a sign, you want it to be legible and easily read. Some of these samples in here were way too decorative.
Well, yeah.
I thought that just a plain black and white information is all you need.
So like, the city of Westlake Village, that's a perfect example. And it would be a blank sign, leave out the date and the time. That information would be filled in by the applicant. They hang it kind of as a real estate sign at the corner of the property. And it suffices.
So no specifying 5 feet in, 10 feet in, no specifying,
Can I jump in there? So just the same way we looked at the radius for the notification for residents, my suggestion would be that we follow that same thing. So I could agree to a small yard sign like we're talking about, 2 by 2. I like West Lakes. I can agree with what Sean's talking about there. But for the larger projects where we're requiring that larger notification, and like you said, with the bigger development, somebody might be driving by faster, I'm all for the 4 by 8 sign in those areas where we're looking at a development, an annexation, something that's of larger impact.
well, I agree with him, though, 4 by 8 is huge. The sign at the lumberyard, you've got your 4 by 8 piece of plywood, and then the sign is within that 4 by 8 saying there's room for new tenants or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 4 by 8 is large. And what you're going 25 maybe by the lumberyard, and it's, I don't know, 50 feet off, and it's easily read, but you still don't need to take up the whole 4 by 8, you know?
Well, I'm assuming the purpose of the sign is to notify who's driving by what it is.
Yeah.
So I would like to see what's being proposed and when the hearing's gonna be. What is it? What's coming, you know?
I like Dublin's the most.
Yes.
Yeah.
There,
Which one?
it's exhibit B, item, or page 4,
Towards the back.
It's the green one.
3 and 4.
Yeah, but we don't need the city,
We don't need the file number on, I mean,
we don't need decoration and,
I thought that at first, but if people aren't paying attention, maybe it's our logo that lets them know it's city. They're gonna know right away when they see the color that it's city. And so even if they don't catch it driving by, they see the logo and they know it's City of Escalon sign.
They'll
And that would
probably-
prompt them to call in it.
They'll probably assume, seeing a sign out, that it's a real estate for sale sign.
They might, but the logo will tell them if
Right.
they aren't able to catch the phone number and stuff.
Without having some stipulation, it's not to stop anybody from grabbing the can of spray paint and a Sharpie and then making the sign. I think there should be some parameters.
yeah, I think so. Well, and I'm thinking like the property that DeBonni's had, I don't know if they still have it, but across from where DeBonni's is now, you've got traffic going by on 120, he's probably dropping down to 35 or 40 at that point, and you've got it on Elizabeth. And, or if you're at Orlando's, it says to put it in the landscaping if the building is already existing. Is there landscaping at Orlando's already? from Big Boy, or
There
is there?
is, it's just dead.
Okay, dead landscaping, yeah.
It's mowed.
But then again, if you've got like the property that used to belong to Tommy Joyce on First Street, you know, a little residence area, it was gonna be a senior housing. There are so many variables to determine size and quantity and distance in and.
That's why I'm suggesting, why I'm suggesting is to get rid of all the variables and just have a standard sign. Keep it simple.
This
So
says
you do the
what?
standard sign, and I'm picturing Devonni's lot over there off Elizabeth and 120.
You're gonna need two signs.
Yeah, I would think that maybe you either want to put one on Elizabeth, one on 120, or somehow we have it angled to where it's like cornering the property at an angle to where you're coming in or off or on Yosemite, or Yosemite, Elizabeth, or you're driving up and down 120 and you catch it. Maybe.
Then like at Brennan and 120, Brennan,
That's
you're,
a smaller lot too.
on 120, you're going 50, and on Brennan, you're, 25.
Sean, I think that was
It's
the part,
50.
I'm not sure if you heard that portion, but I agree with this sign that you're talking about, smaller for, like the items that we had determined that a 600-foot notification radius was sufficient, that this notification would also be sufficient, but on those larger radiused items, annexations, new developments, those types of things, that a larger sign would better suit the public.
I would agree with that.
But not 4x8.
And I mean, how often, I mean, an annexation is a pretty significant event. And it probably doesn't happen all too often. So I think that regardless of the size of the annexation, we think big, but it could be a smaller portion. I think that needs to be a bigger sign. And to your point of a 4x8, whatever the size is, I think we do need to be clear that don't put up a 4x8 sheet of plywood and use a quarter of it. There needs to be some standards of what it says. On this Dublin one, any idea of, I'm assuming that the city gave the applicant a template, or who provided it? I mean, it's nice looking, it's got some posts and stuff, but, I mean, that took some work and some cost to make.
Well, team or commission, I guess that's my point, is with this Dublin sign, it creates a city standard. And honestly, that's what I like about Sacramento County, is that it's a standard, no matter what the development is across Sacramento County. And so we could come up with something like this for our projects. I mean, I agree now that as you speak, if it's a bigger development, using a bigger sign or a bigger project, use this sign. But there's no reason that this can't be condensed to go this way for a smaller sign and.
Sure, 2x2, like a yard sign.
And hang it from a real estate post, kind of like what we're talking about.
Let me point out, this thing right here, there's no date of a meeting coming up.
We could add that in there, date of public meeting.
Yeah, we could add the information we want to have in there.
It looks like this would be just for the planning application notice, so not notice of public hearing. We could definitely change that, notice of public hearing.
Correct.
But by putting a date, you're getting rid of your reusable template.
No,
No,
just add a line, project name, file number, date and time of public meeting, project description.
Right, but once you put the date on it, how does the next person use it? Because their date is going to be different.
Dry erase marker.
Inclement weather.
well, what's this MDO they talk
Vandals.
about? Is
Project
MDO,
number's gonna
That's
change.
the type of plastic that the sign is made out of.
so is it a sturdy thing? Is it weather resistant? Do you put it up between two pieces, two 2x4s or two 4x4s?
It has some rigidity. Yeah, they're, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe.
And can you use a dry erase pen on that, or
I don't know.
can you just make the sign out of MDO and keep the posts and have, just do a new sign with each,
Those types of sign, it would be like do-go signs or I'll say anything. That's where you would get them printed. Justin would, if it was the city was doing it, we don't have the capability to make them here. We would hire a third party to do it.
Well, what if we kind of come up with this idea of a template, and then this portion is more or less a sticker or something that they can apply over that. Next one comes on, peel that off, and put the next one on. I mean, it's not like there's that many large projects.
So are you thinking like an actual notification board, like one of these outside, that maybe we have, and it has the screen, and we may, no?
No, you're not gonna be able to see that thing.
No, but if
Why?
it's big enough, they make them that size where they have the, I mean, it would be costly, obviously, but it would be reusable as well.
It would be like our weed abatement signs, where it's already pre-printed.
Yeah,
And then we post it on different properties.
Or we come up with this template like we talk about, and instead of having, having a deposit, as I mentioned, coming up with this template and tell them either this is our template, contact either I'll say anything with signs or do-go signs. Contact them, they have the city template, your responsibility to put up the sign.
Yeah, I
could do
think
that.
you see, the city logo, what's gonna be built, who's the applicant, when the meeting is, its location, here's contact information. And then specify the materials it needs to be made out of, and let the builder or the developer get it done, as long as we got, here's the specs that it needs to be, here's the information that needs to be on it.
two things. Charlie Dugal was gonna retire years ago. Has he retired? Is there somebody still operating Dugal signs?
Still operating.
Okay, and then it says planning application notice. Is that a good heading?
No, we
Do
changed it
Planning
to-
hearing notice?
Planning application and notice of public hearing.
Okay. So,
My comment would be, we're posting these signs, and I'm going back to the big annexation on Brennan and 120. Having all those details on the sign, we certainly, I think we want to encourage people to reach out to the city, because we don't want people to stop on 120 and say, oh, what does that say? So I think we need to be very careful on what details we put in there, because I think it needs to be very minimal. That there is a project.
Maybe we don't include, well, not necessarily description, but
You need the description, you need to know what's coming in town.
and you need the file number if you're gonna call the number for information. You need to know what you're describing. The project might not have a name.
I don't think project number is needed.
No.
Because nobody will ever remember that. or-
We have so few. If they say the project on 120, planning staff
We
will
know what
know
you're talking about, yeah,
what it will be at that time.
yeah.
So you're saying the file number, or?
Not necessary.
so how about project name, project applicant,
Projects typically don't have a name when an applicant comes in with
Yeah.
it.
No, description, what's proposed? Tell me what it is.
I say
Well,
call
we
the city.
don't need to say the city of Escalon has received an application for it.
No.
No, I would be very precise, yeah.
Okay,
So date and time and what, it's, June 14th, 2022, Planning Commission, 7:30. Here's the street address.
here's project description, show up.
Yeah,
okay, so planning application and notice of hearing, project name, date and time of meeting, description, and then for additional information, contact.
See, I like this
I like
one.
call city
I like
hall.
this one here.
Because,
Well, it's got everything on it. You just scratch out what you don't want, but, you know,
What page is that, Steve?
that is 1-1. Yeah.
They give them case numbers.
Case number.
But that, I mean, that's
they're
great.
getting a little wordy.
That's great if you're walking by with your notepad, but driving by,
You're gonna see, okay, some of us have had the opportunity, maybe I'll call it an opportunity, where there's standing room only because it was a really big development that was coming into town. And everybody knew about it because there was a great big sign on 2 streets that said it was coming. You remember those?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but this one's got too much on it.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't say,
Okay,
I
so
just,
scratch case number.
No case
Yeah.
number. Don't need the applicant.
you don't need the applicant. This is what it is.
Proposal, description, same thing,
Yep. Date and
date
time,
and time.
location. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't put a location on the first one. For
Yeah.
additional information, that's a lot of stuff down there too.
Yeah, and well, do you need to really have the city name if you got the logo? You know what it is.
Yeah, City of Escalon. What do you think? What I would like to do, Diane, I know you're taking notes, if you could, repeat what we decided on 1 through 5, or maybe wait till we get through number 6. Are there any other? First of all, any changes to what we've talked about with number 5?
Well, I think if we're going to look at it, we need to go through each of those items real quickly there as well. We've talked a lot about the board, but not any of the other items. So 5A, days before the meeting, the board should be posted.
10?
I would say 10 or 15, whatever corresponds with the notices that are being sent out.
Yeah, I'd say more than that. I'd say 30 days out. You want to give people
I agree with Steve. 30
plenty
days.
enough notice of what's going on.
All right, and that's different, that's a permanently placed thing, it's not just something you're drawing up on Facebook or
Yeah.
Right.
getting in the mail and throwing in some slot somewhere.
So does that correspond with the same amount of time that we're requiring for the other notices? Because it is going to be the stipulation for part of this, and we do want to try and keep it in the same time frame. So it's 21 days, because you said it takes 25 days roughly? Or you give a 30-day turnaround to the applicant? And
From
then
the
it's,
day, from the day they submit their application, we'd give them a 30-day review period, and then whenever the next planning commission falls after that is when they get on the meeting.
so at the time of that review, at what point would they typically place that notification?
So what we could tell them is the day that they submit their application is when we give them the information and tell them they need to get the sign up within 72 hours.
It could be a quick
Or
turnaround time for a
5 days.
printing company.
Yeah,
Something like that.
so when they submit an application, it does take planning staff maybe about a week to get through their submittal and see if it's complete, if there's any other information that we need, if there's something else that they need to turn in. So having them put up the board 30 days, we don't know for sure yet when their public hearing date is going to be, because we haven't reviewed their application yet. So 30 days could push them to another month of
Okay,
a future meeting.
So what if they submit an application, city staff reviews it and has any comments, then the city staff releases the sign for production? And they post it.
Well, I would think a developer that's coming into town wants to get a feel on how his project is accepted into town. You know, kind of like the property in Irwin, they didn't do a whole lot yet, and they didn't like what they heard, and they decided to walk away, you know?
So the city of Dublin, theirs is more general, and I think they say that when it says, when they have to put it up. So they're required to post their notice 10 days after the city accepts their application. So this is They don't have the public hearing date on here, because this is just saying the city received an application on this property. Contact the city if you want more
Yeah.
information.
That might be good enough for the
It's just
sign.
notice that an application was
It's
received.
coming.
It's
Yeah, but
coming,
then- But
is
then
what
we
it
want a
is.
second sign out for the meeting.
Well, call the city and ask them when the meeting is.
Oh, you guys are gonna get.
If you're not one of the 3,000 people, we'll send a notice out to you.
Right, this is
Trust
just
me,
another
in
venue.
this town, they'll talk at a sporting event
Yeah.
or something else.
We've
Or
got
we'll get a-
Staff's recommendation, if you want it, more than 15 days ahead of the meeting on the property, I would advise more of just a general notice, something's coming on the property, contact the
As
city or
opposed
check
to
the website.
specifics.
If it's 15 days or less, then the actual public hearing sign, here's the date of the meeting, time.
So do we want a
But then you're
hearing
gonna-
notification or an application notification?
I'm just thinking of the calls that are gonna come in for you. I mean, I got a call today, when is this thing gonna be talked about, because, I don't know. But 10 days, for the social media, 15 days for mailing, it seems like, I don't know, 15 is, I don't know, I like the specific, I don't, you're just gonna be swamped with calls if we only put out that there's something coming. I think we should wait until there's specific time.
Then that would be a hearing notice.
Yeah, that's what I like.
I think, you need to remember, we're not looking at this in a vacuum. This isn't the only thing that's out there. It'll be on the website. There'll be notices. So it's not like this sign is the only thing they're gonna see. In fact, I would even propose that people driving by 120, looking back at that project, are just gonna glance at it and say, oh, what's that? And if they're interested, they're going to call.
Or park and walk over and read it, or walk by with their dog later in the day, or,
But Chair, let's play devil's advocate here. Part of what we're trying to do is encourage our residents to reach out to staff to find out what's going on. And open up those lines of communication. And so if all we're trying to do is just tell somebody, hey, it's coming, then that will suffice. Then they will, if they feel strongly against it or for it, such as Irwin Village, they can call up and say, hey, I just saw this sign out of California, there's an application. I don't want that to come into my town. And then staff can say, great, there's a public meeting on July 14th. Show up and speak your piece.
well, you have a point. I'm coming from, Steve and I both were on this body when we decided all the rules surrounding signs, advertising meetings for hearings. We've done this before, and it was never, there's gonna be something on this property, just wait and see, wait and see. It was always specifics. And so that's where my mind is. That's what we decided on before, and I guess that's why I lean toward that now.
That was a really big project, though.
Yeah.
I think we can become much more detailed in the social media posts, which will be, I think, seen by much more people about the specifics of the project.
Well, the intent is to notify the community that something's gonna be happening on this site. I think that's what we're trying to get at.
And we welcome any and all calls. Anybody who wants to call and ask a project, it's not seen as a burden.
No.
We're happy to disseminate the information and provide accurate information about projects that are coming. We welcome people to call.
And we're gonna put the department number on, and so they're going to get Jenny, Diana, or myself, and we're the ones that will be most knowledgeable about the project. And so it won't be like they're swamping the front office, affecting utilities and other things. It'll just
No.
be our department.
Okay, well, let's go back to where we were. The days before the meeting, the board should be posted.
I say 30. Well,
I
no,
say-
the sign should be posted within 5 days that the application was accepted from staff.
Does that make sense?
That, I don't know, is that gonna give the developer enough time to put it?
I mean, obviously, if they're having issues getting the sign up, we would work with them. We're not gonna we wouldn't penalize them for it.
Okay.
If they
we know that
contact
they've
a sign
contacted.
yeah, if they contact a sign company and the sign company says it's 7 days out for us to make the sign or get it up.
Okay, yeah, I don't wanna put a burden on somebody coming in here. They can't meet our timeline.
Yeah, you approve it on July 1st, and then they've got a weekend, and then they've got a holiday, and then they've got a, eating up their time of having the sign up.
So you, clarify this for me, you review the application, and then once it's accepted, then you route it internally. Does that start the 30-day window, or is the first 7 days part of the 30-day window?
The day it's released to those agencies starts the
That-
30-day window.
That's what I would say, that's when the calendar starts, is when it's released to those agencies.
So you want the sign posted
Within
30
5 days.
Within 5 days of it being approved by city staff,
Accepted.
accepted?
This is a notice of application, not the public hearing notice.
I have to disagree a little bit. If we're talking about different signs for different items, for the person who is going to, if we're just looking at the annexation, that's the larger project. For somebody who's just looking at the variance, that's working and commuting every day and taking their kids to soccer practice and still has to figure out a time to get this sign made, and they have this limited time frame. I don't know if we can go back to kind of like the size of the sign based on the size of the project. So on these smaller projects that they could post it for 10 days and they've got a board sitting out in front of their house, but for the annexation, for the development, for the tearing down of a historical monument in town, I think those are the things that the people of the community are gonna be most concerned with. They're not gonna care about the guy 2 blocks away trying to move his fence forward 3 feet.
Do we even need a sign for those items? I'm thinking, I would say no.
You?
Okay, so let's, like we did with the other ones, let's say, no, we don't need a hearing board for, what, we need it for annexation.
For all of the things within the 6.
Okay, so the CDGI,
100 feet, you don't need it. The further out you do.
I would agree with that.
I think that's a good
And Jay.
idea. Yep. There's some consistency there.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta go spend $500 to buy a sign because I'm moving my fence.
Right?
okay, so 5 days after acceptance, is that what, or
Yes,
approval,
because the-
or?
No, acceptance, because
Acceptance.
by that and here's how I differentiate it. Diana, correct me if I'm wrong. You look at this packet and you say, yep, okay, everything's here. We're gonna start this process. It's gonna be routed to all these different agencies. That's accepting it.
Correct.
That's not approval. So we accept it, that starts the review, then they put the sign up.
So even though it says
think
days
that's when you get the
before the
money.
meeting,
Right.
the board, we're not doing the days before the meeting, we're doing 5 days after acceptance.
Well, I think you need to have, I think you actually, I mean, I don't know how the calendar days all work out, but I think the 5 days after acceptance, plus a minimum of 10 days before the meeting, 15 days before the meeting, just in case there's any
You
type
could
of
say that.
overlap.
Typically, we wouldn't accept an application and then have it within 15 days, especially because we have to post in the newspaper and it takes 15 days to get it in the newspaper. Our timeline isn't usually that short. Usually, we want 30 days.
Yeah, that 5 days acceptance, then that starts the 30-day review period. So if, let's say they take all 5 days to get that sign out there, there's still 25 days during the review period that it's being discussed.
Okay, as far as size of board, are we gonna be consistent on that? If we're just gonna, are we just gonna have one size?
If you're not requiring it on C, D, F, G, and I, then it's only those big applications that have to put the board up.
And they can afford a 4x8 sign. They need. a
Custom made, yeah.
4x8.
2 of them sometimes.
Seems like, I don't know, I think 4 by 8's too big. But, and then the material board, that's a standard. Size of font? Well, we've got the template,
Well, yeah,
and
they
if your
follow the city.
description has got a, you know, if you have a lot of words in your description, you might want a smaller font for that.
They follow the city standard.
Yeah, I think D and E could be contained in that, right? To the following city template, so that would follow the size of the font, information contained.
Does the city have a adopted font?
No.
And then location of the board, we're not gonna determine 5 feet in, 10 feet in,
I would say,
front of the building?
no, I would say at a minimum, at a minimum, there has to be at least 2 signs facing the street.
One
If it's on a
sign
corner,
per street?
On a corner lot.
Right. So if it's corner lot, you have 1 on either side.
but if it's not a corner, I don't think that mini mart would have warranted 2 signs. Roosevelt doesn't have any activity really.
So that jumps to G, right? Possibly more than one board. If we look at F first, the location of the board, does anybody have restrictions like how far in the property it can or can't be?
I would say within 5 feet of the property line.
No less than, no more than?
I put down 10 feet, but
So like no less than 10, no less than 5, no more than 10?
No more, well, I was gonna say no more than 5. That way you can actually see it.
Yeah.
We don't want the kids on the bicycles riding by and
Yeah,
crashing
is there
into
any
it.
safety concerns with,
We don't want it to be a visibility issue either.
right on the,
You're
Point,
turning a
yeah, good
corner.
on the
point.
corner?
And so we'll end up potentially making them post it on the actual property, not in the public right of way, I would think. Yeah.
Well, and I think, what did you say, not less than 5, not more than 10? We don't know if there's gonna be a planter box, if there's gonna be a, you know, what kind of amenities the property already has.
It could be site-specific.
Well, but if we've got variability,
Is there a telephone pole on the property?
or light standard,
I mean,
yeah.
could we say, you know, give it whatever the distance is, or as discussed and approved with city staff, you know, based on those
Yeah.
What's the,
nuances?
Love it, that's perfect.
typically, do we have a 15-foot PUE?
10 to 15. Yeah, it's usually 10. Some areas there's a 15. Some areas don't have any.
Just thinking, what happens if the public utility has to come in and start?
Well, and that's what we were saying. If they have a public utilities easement or in the public right of ways, typically the same size, we're gonna offset it off that area, so it might be set back a little bit.
So why don't we make this easy and say at a location to be determined in consultation with city staff?
Okay, proof of posting? Leave that?
And that's just them basically, yeah, taking a picture and sending it to us. And then we'd have Public Works verify.
Clarifying that, we are going from F to H, so on G, are we gonna leave that up to staff as well to determine if more than one board would be needed for the lot?
One board per street. So if it faces one street, they need a board. If it's a corner lot, I would say they would need 2.
Yeah, but I don't think that mini mart needed 2 signs. Roosevelt didn't need a sign for
It's a small
that, just
lot.
one. To be determined by staff.
So when it goes wrong,
Yeah.
Days after the meeting, the sign should be removed.
I would say
3,
take it down after
72
the
hours,
appeal
yeah.
period closes.
Correct.
10?
So the 10,
Yeah, good point.
is that 10 business?
Okay, any other
Calendar days.
details?
So after, within 72 hours after the close of the appeal period?
I mean, I don't think it hurts to leave it up much longer, but I think the minimum we would say is when the appeal period closes. Them leaving it up a little bit longer, then that's not a concern, but them taking it down before the appeal period would be more of a concern to me.
Then wouldn't you also want to leave it up, the appeal period, and then after the decision on the appeal, include?
If somebody files one, the
Yeah.
appeal period is if somebody files, If somebody does file an appeal, then we would just make them leave it.
Leave it up till it's
Yeah,
done.
until that's completed, but they'd probably have to update the board for the appeal then too, because that's listed in here. So then they'd have to do that as well.
Okay,
There's another expense for them on top of the appeal.
any other details we didn't cover under 5? And number 6? Oh,
Well, actually, yes. And I'm kind of weird, as you all know. But I really like having this QR code on the sign.
I looked at that and was like, is that a QR code?
I would agree.
That way, if somebody goes by, they can take a picture of it. It takes them right to the information.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, those are everybody,
Make us
what,
get with the times
40
here.
and younger?
Yeah, I
Gotta
don't
find
even
out how to do that. I don't know how to do that.
Actually,
Just take a picture.
You take a
Yeah.
picture
Now,
of
how
it?
do you
Yeah.
create one to put on a board?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, that's the one I'm not.
if you go to qr.me, you can create a QR code for pretty much anything. I'll show you.
And I hate to backtrack a little bit, but on item B, the size of board, you know, and I think we keep going back to the mini mart. A 4x8 on that lot probably would be huge. So I would almost propose, just like we've done on other items, you know, determine the size of the board as discussed with city staff.
You're thinking 2 variables of signs, either a 2x2 or a 4x8.
I would
You could set a lot size. Lots less than 10,000 square feet, 2x2 is fine. Lots more than 10,000 square feet, you gotta do a 4x8.
I think 2x2 is too small. I think 4x4 or 4x8.
Whatever you guys want.
Well, I think that I heard that comment several times that people wanted to know what that was over there. And coming down McHenry, it's not, people do still walk, but the course of travel is in a vehicle. So that would be the way to catch the attention. In an empty lot, a smaller sign, 4x4, may not draw the attention, may look like another for sale sign. I think the big standout 4x8, somebody's gonna see that and what the heck is that? And it's gonna catch their eye. I agree that it's large.
What about 4x6?
Well, why, but they don't have to cut the plywood down, or cut anything down if they're doing 4x4, 4x8.
Have you seen the sign at the lumberyard?
I have not.
Well, they would be required to use
That's
the
not a
template,
project.
though, so.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
What was that?
That's not a project, is it?
No, but it's
That's
just
on
that the
personal
sign isn't as big as the 4x8. So you've got 4x8 showing on both ends.
And you could read it from the street,
Tacky, yeah, it's easily
Yeah.
read from the street, but,
even when you're flying around that corner.
Well, I think Diana brings up a good point
yeah,
that if
the
it's,
size of the lot.
yeah, if it's less than 10,000 square foot, a 4x4 sign would be fine. If it's bigger than 4x8.
I would recommend a larger lot than 10,000. I'd say like 20,000. That's what, a little less than a half an acre? I mean, you know, 10,000 square foot lot's 100 by 100. That-
The Dollar Tree building is 10,000 square feet.
It's exactly, or it's under, or it's,
It's just, I think it's 9,900 and something, it's just about.
the lot over here, was that like 6?
Which one?
For, the mini mart that's going across the street here?
He was just over 6,200 maybe?
So why don't we follow half an acre and under 4x4, half an acre and over 4x8? ARP says no.
You know, if I hadn't seen that one, we never authorized a 4x8 before, we always were smaller.
The one sign minimum or something like that, because I hate to get us hicked up on, they're right under half acre or whatever in it. I don't know.
I will,
What's that?
The numbers kind of throw me off. I'm thinking about it backwards. Never mind.
I can handle 4x6.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so, can you read us back 1 through 6? I don't think.
Let me clarify B. So if it's a half acre or less, it's what size?
4 by 4.
And if it's larger than half acre,
4 by 8. Yes, 4 by 6.
all right.
4 by 8?
That's gonna reduce the size of the font.
And if they say,
Well,
"Well, I'm gonna
really
have
is.
to cut the piece of wood," then we'll tell them, put the 4x8.
All right.
And I think they'll max, whatever size the sign is, they maximize the wording to fill the board.
Yeah,
You don't
let's-
get to put a
let's
tiny
make it easy,
page
4
on
by
there.
8.
And we'll give them the template. I think we will fill in the
After you see your
information and
first
we'll send them the
Provide the
document.
PDF.
Give them the PDF and they just have to go get it printed. Print this to fit the board.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay, all right, so what do you have for number 1?
All right, number of days before the planning commission meeting, the public hearing notice should be published in the newspaper. We're gonna keep it at 10 days. And we're gonna add that the notice also needs to be posted on the official city website, official city social media site, at least 10 days prior to the meeting.
Okay, 2.
Two,
Sites, plural.
Sites.
Before we go, so they're gonna be responsible for posting to the city site?
no, we
No,
do that.
we would do all that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Number of days before the planning commission meeting, the public hearing notice should be mailed, 15 days.
15, okay, 3.
And the current, Steve, this is back to your question in the beginning about calendar days or business days. So the municipal code currently reads calendar days, so we would keep it calendar days. Okay, that was 2. 3, surrounding parcel radius, the public hearing notice should be mailed. So if it is applications C, D, F, G, or I, it'll be 600 feet. The rest of them are A, B, E, H, J, K are 1,200 feet.
F is gonna be whatever the first one was.
However, the way it was originally noticed, do it the same way again.
That'd be
You're
the same
thinking
for
that's-
H?
F,
And
And
H, and I. F, H, and I.
F also?
Appeals?
It goes back to original.
If a conditional use permit gets appealed, we would notice it the same way it was originally.
Yeah.
F, H, and I. Number 4, regarding tenants, we are no longer going to send it to tenants, just property owners. 5, we're going to sounded like you kind of liked the layout of Wildemar. If I'm not, no, that was the notice of public hearing. We decided not that one.
Like Dublin.
Dublin.
Dublin kept it simple.
Yeah, we want simple.
Like the format of Dublin. Information with the notice of application. Or it's the, no, not the date and hearing.
Planning application and notice of hearing.
Project name, number, description. And you like the QR code.
Date and time of meeting.
Well, but that won't be
We won't know the
established.
date and time of the meeting.
Okay.
So the purpose of this is just to spawn
We'll
discussion.
we'll copy what Dublin's says. Post, the applicant has to post it within 5 days of acceptance by city staff. No public hearing boards required on C, D, F, G, or I.
Okay, in there too.
Also the same other items, it corresponds with the,
J, public hearing board, you have J. I have J as one of the major applications. Is that not right?
Demolition of a designated storage.
Yeah,
location.
that is,
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
it doesn't burn down.
So days, it should be posted within 5 days of the city accepting the application. Size of the board, half acre or less, 4x4, larger than a half acre, 4x6. Material of the board,
Didn't we go to 4x8 on that?
We got,
do we not have consensus on 4x6?
we have consensus.
Let's hear it again, 4x6 or 4x8?
I gave you.
Wasting wood.
Go with 4x8.
Okay,
You're wasting.
4x8.
Thank you.
4x8.
Material of the board.
Sheet of plywood.
Did you like what Dublin had, this MDO or similar rigid weather resistant material?
I think we just say weather resistant.
It's weather resistant,
Rigid, weather resistant, yeah.
rigid, weather resistant. Size of font, we just said that we're gonna give them the PDF of the form and they need to fit it to fill the whole board. We talked about information contained on the board. It's gonna mimic the City of Dublin one. Location of the board, that's F. To be determined by consult with city staff. G, how many boards to be determined by consult with city staff.
Minimum of one. Corner lots, 2. That's just what I was saying.
Agreed?
Staff.
What's the question, ma'am?
How many boards to be determined by city staff?
City
At
staff.
least one,
Yeah.
Yeah, minimum 1.
minimum one. What did you say, Sean? 2 on corner lots?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because if it's out there in the middle of nowhere and these are the 2 less traveled streets and this street over here is heavily traveled, they're gonna say, well, we put it over here. Well, people can't see it over there. Put it over here.
If it was on a corner, couldn't we have it angled towards the direction of prevailing traffic? Because they're not gonna see it anyway, right? If they're driving parallel to the sign, they're looking left or right, they would catch both sides if it was diagonal to oncoming traffic.
Who would you put that on the Brennan 120 then?
It depends if there's anything existing on the site. Vacant lots are easy. Things with existing structures or pavement might be difficult. And then if it's like Irwin Village that had 3 sides,
That's why we want you to make that decision where it goes.
Yeah, because one on the corner of Roosevelt and McHenry would have been okay, or one facing McHenry would have been okay.
Smaller area, yeah.
Yeah.
But like at Irwin, you couldn't have a corner one at 120 in Irwin.
Down
You want
Irwin
to
in
catch
California.
people on Irwin, you want to catch people in California.
minimum 1, 2 on corner lots. 3 on 3 corner lots.
Or more as determined.
Or you can just put, yeah, as determined by city staff. H, proof of posting to development services, yes, requiring proof of posting. I, days after the meeting, the sign should be removed after the appeal period closes. And add a QR code.
Should we have something there that there is a specific time after the appeals period, because things didn't go their way and they don't care, they just want to leave it there?
It would make enforcing it easier if there was a time period.
72 hours, that was mentioned, but
10 days, a week, 5 days?
I would think 5 days is,
Of calendar days.
Well, we tell them to put it up within 5 days. We should probably tell them to take it down within 5 days
yeah,
to be consistent.
5 days after the close of the appeal period. Is there anything we haven't addressed?
Height? Do you have a preference on the height to the top of the sign, how tall their post should be?
No taller than 6 feet.
Good.
Highest total height.
And we're not obscured by landscaping?
Must be clearly visible.
Because if 2 feet off the ground, that would only, I mean, that, a 4x8 sheet, that would only put it 2 feet off the ground. Is that kind of low?
Maybe they have issues if they do have landscaping, if they have bushes and stuff. We don't want them to have to chop things down. So
7
maybe
feet?
it's, yeah,
3 feet off the ground, 7 feet?
I think that's fine.
Yeah. Probably need a 10-foot post.
Makes sense? Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, so is there a recommendation? What do we do?
Procedure, review and make recommendations, Escalon City Council. Do they have to make a motion?
Yes.
Chair, I would like to move that we make the appropriate recommendations as listed to the Escalon City Council regarding the amendments to the Escalon Municipal Code, Chapter 17.51.050, Notice of Hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
There you go.
Okay, administrative matters. Nominate and select commission chair for fiscal year 22-23. I believe we have that, so. Have to be nominated?
Just need to open nominations.
Someone, yeah, but open nominations.
Okay, nominations are open. Is there a nomination for a chair for fiscal year 22-23?
Well, sure, I will, I'd like to nominate Vice Chair Stroman to be the Commissioner Chair for the year 22-23.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Do I take a vote, or do I ask if there are any other nominations? Take a vote and then
Are there any other nominations?
the
You
nominations.
should just ask, yeah.
Is there any other nominations? Okay, we'll take a vote.
Can I
What?
refrain from voting?
Sure. Abstain.
Okay, we have a nomination by Mark for Sean to be the chair, and it was seconded by Steve. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One abstention?
2
Two
abstentions.
abstentions. Vote carries, we've got a quorum. All right, number 4, nominate and select commission vice chair for fiscal year 22-23.
Chair, I would like to nominate Commissioner Sarkozy for the vice chair position for fiscal year 22-23.
Thank you. Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? We have the one. We have Mark, nominated by Sean and seconded by Jeremy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll abstain.
Did you, or did you vote?
No, I didn't vote.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still carried. Okay, matters presented from the audience. We still don't have any in the audience, yeah. Okay, so then we'll move on to staff communications.
The only thing I have is that we are planning on having a July Planning Commission meeting. That would be July 12th. You should have either picked up or received with your Planning Commission packet the multifamily senior design guidelines. Yep, JB Anderson and Associates has been our consultant working with us on that. They will be here to present and answer any questions. With that, possibly the MSR will be on the July meeting as well. It's currently with LAFCO for a preliminary review to make sure everything is on the right track. And once we've kind of get the thumbs up from LAFCO, it'll come to Planning Commission and then City Council and then back to LAFCO for official approval. So we're waiting to hear back from LAFCO. We had tentatively set it for July, but it just depends how quickly we can hear back from them if we're ready to move forward.
And so those design guidelines that we have before you for both multifamily and senior housing, in accordance with a lot of state mandates that have come out since 2019 regarding housing, affordable housing, senior housing, specific to affordable housing, in accordance with Senate Bill 35 and a couple other Senate bills that they have in there, basically that law says that if you're looking at a project and you want to be able, like we were limited to site and architecture when it came to the Irwin Village project, and that's because site and architecture is objective. So if you want to have more objective standards, this is why those guidelines are moving forward. Currently, we just follow site and architecture intermunicipal code, which is very generalized. It's just
Basic.
Mm-hmm. This is more detailed, so that when somebody comes in with a multifamily or senior housing project, these are objective guidelines that they have to meet. And if they don't meet them, then you are able to deny the project or ask them to make the correction to meet those standards. And in the event that they don't meet the standards, then the project can be denied. And so those are where we're moving forward.
So what, those are in addition to the broad terms of site and architecture? Or?
So for the most part, the site and architecture we have in the municipal code is very general. Mm-hmm. These would be the guidelines that we would refer them to if they're doing a project. You have to meet all these guidelines to do this project to be approved. And so it does have more detail to guide them through, but that provides you that objective standard. It's definitely more detailed than what we have in the code currently, and so it gives us a better basis to work off for projects that are submitted.
So if there is anything additional you would like to see in these types of projects, we would want to put those comments into the document. We would want to add those design guidelines.
And this item will have our consultant that worked on them presenting it, and so he specialized in that area, and so you would be able to discuss that with him and or get additional feedback from him on what can be added or how to address things more specifically. And that's JB Anderson out of Ripon. Then the next item I have was, I sent an email last week regarding AB 1234. It's the ethics training. It's a link that goes into the state FPPC website to where you can log in and take that training. It is a required mandatory 2-hour training. It is available to take at any time, so if you happen to stay up in the middle of the night and you're bored, you could take it. Or you're sitting in traffic for 2 hours. No, I'm kidding. But when you do, at the end, it will prompt you to print a certificate, and please make sure that in the top right-hand corner of that certificate that it says that you've done at least 2 hours, because that's the required time. And then just print it out, and you could drop it off here at City Hall. Email it over to me. Either way is fine, and we'll go ahead and update it in your file. Another staff communication, swimming pool. Swimming pool, we're currently looking for lifeguards. We need 4 more applications for lifeguards, preferably certified already to be able to open the pool. And so if anybody knows anyone, please send them here. We have applications up on the website. They could email them in, they could drop them off, they could call in, put their name on a list. We're taking information basically from anybody who contacts us to try to move forward with filling those positions. If we are unable to get at least 8 lifeguards and 1 supervisor, we won't be able to open the pool this year. So that's where we're at with the pool.
Is there a deadline for that?
As soon as possible. I don't really have a deadline per se, but we were hoping to open in July. If we're not able to open by maybe the second week in July, it might not be worth opening unless we're able to find somebody. But if you know somebody, please send them over and we could try to work something out, yeah. Trying to think of, there's activity over at Orlando's, I noticed that. And so they're cleaning out the building, it looks like, and they've been there every day this week, getting things situated. And so we're excited to see that moving forward. Took a while. But I'm glad to see that it is moving forward. And anything else that we had come in? I don't believe so. Oh, just in case. Election. San Joaquin County will be consolidating our election with San Joaquin County, so basically they'll handle our election for us, which is how we've done it every election. They appear to be a little bit behind on schedule because we don't meet with them till this week to go over election standards, but we're still going to be meeting all those deadlines, and so we should be having resolutions going to council declaring the election, the periods, what seats are up. Currently, there will be 4 seats up in November. There will be 3 4-year term seats, and there will be 1 2-year term seat. When you apply to run for council, you'll have to specify which seat. So if somebody's not interested in the 2-year seat and doesn't apply for that seat, we may not have anybody running for it. And in that case, once the election's complete, we would move forward with some type of appointment process. I'm going to confirm with them this week, but in looking at my ballot from this year, or from the election we had a few weeks ago, and my past experience in other counties, I am under the understanding that you could possibly run for both and see which one you get and then give up one. I'm going to confirm that this week and then get back to everyone on that. But that information will be coming forward. The nomination day that we'll start moving forward with that is going to open July 18th. And it's typically a 3-week period, so we're looking at going through the first week of August. And it's 20 signatures. We'll give you a binder that has all the information, all the paperwork. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of forms, a lot of stuff, a lot of signatures, stamping. And so it kind of gets hectic because I might call you 4 or 5 times in a week. You're missing this. Now you're missing this. Now you're missing this. It just depends how many applications I get. I'm under the impression we're going to get a lot of applications. But I realize things change too, so I'm not absolutely sure how many. But we're going to make plenty of binders to make sure we don't run into the habit of not having the paperwork ready. So, and I think that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Communications, Steve?
No, I don't have anything, other than thank you for all of your great work, both of you.
Mark?
Yeah, ditto. Thank you for your presentation tonight. I don't have anything.
Jeremy?
I'll just ditto what's been said. Thank you.
Incoming chair?
Just want to thank my fellow commissioners for having the confidence in me for being the chair for fiscal year 22-23, and I look forward to a successful year. And quadruple ditto staff. Every time we have these presentations, you give us all the information and makes our job so much easier. So thanks for all of your hard work.
Thank you to staff. thank you to the commission. You guys do a good job of preparing and presenting, so kudos to everybody present. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Congratulations.